20 years ago, the anime we would have been watching in 2002 if only we could have. 20 years ago, no streaming, no simulcast, particularly no R2 DVDs and very little anime to be found on TV. Until CNX began showing anime in 2002 and ran until 2003. But that's another story. How on earth did we get our anime fix in the UK back then? If we look back at the titles that were released in 2002, we realize that even if we didn't get the chance to watch them that year in the UK, many of them were series that we've come to know and love since then. Some are so critically acclaimed that they've been released as DVDs and then Blu-rays. To join us for some unashamed nostalgia as we put the clock back to 2002. Darkstorm. 2002 was a very important year for me because it was the year I became an anime fan. I experienced anime before my early teens, with the likes of Sailor Moon, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Pokemon broadcasting on TV. I've been heavily addicted, but as a kid, unless you had a otaku family or friends, you didn't really know what anime was. To me, those series were just cool cartoons that didn't feel different from the likes of Rugrats and Hey Arnold. So 2002 was a turning point when I knew what anime was and I knew I wanted to be part of it. And it was also the point where there seems to be more adult shows both on TV and available to purchase. I also talk about my first grown-up anime in the beginning article back in 2019. So today I'll focus on a couple of others that I also remember coming out at that time. First, let's get this out of the way. It's been 20 years since Spirited Away came out. It doesn't seem to be true, but it is. I want to say that I was fully on board with this movie when it first came out, but I wasn't. I didn't hate it, but I didn't fully get it either. The animation was of course unique. Joe Hisashi's score was mesmerizing and it was different from anything else I'd been, but I didn't feel the need to rewatch it upon finishing it either. As I got older, drunk and learned more about Studio Ghibli's history and other films. While The Wolf Got This is my favorite of theirs, I do think it was an important film to be exposed to young and the perfect film to be first picked up by Western audiences. It's an Alice in Wonderland type of adventure where the world of her own drops into it isn't kind to her and will turn on her if she makes the wrong move. She's a fish out of water, while also helping both her selfish parents, not bad people, not just big bad decisions, and spirits within the bad house who need someone to point them in the right direction. It's a film that gets better with every watch, and so glad we got access to Ghibli's film library as a result of this film's success. Also, just because I experienced adult animation doesn't mean that I said goodbye to kids shows altogether. At the time, I was very much into Yu-Gi-Oh, which is on ITV and eventually Sky. Ultra, I remember watching it on the later more, and I still have. I have fond test for the show to this day. When I reviewed the crossover movie Bonds of Time back in 2011, it wasn't a screening I felt I had to go to. I really wanted to attend it. Despite its heavy edits and dubbing choices, I still had the unique art style, the dot had very quotable and meme-worthy lines. The cast was great, and just the card game itself. How involved, cheesy, yet dark and creative it was. How seriously they took it, and how it shaped their whole world. It influenced a lot of similar anime and games to this day. Bakugan, for example. But the original Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a series I look fondly upon no matter how old I get. Ruby. I didn't actually watch any of the shows I'm going to mention in this piece in 2002 itself due to the state of the industry at that time. But I was following the news and vividly remember my fellow fans raving about their latest fansub reviewings of Azumanga Daioh, which is at the time ubiquitous, at least in the UK. Some of the favorites from the era have since fallen by the wayside. I don't remember the last time I heard anything about talking about magical shopping arcade Abenobashi, Fomo, or Sakashite, or She the Ultimate Weapon. For example, even Drunk they were all well loved in their day, but others like Gundam Seed and Fullmetal Panic eventually made it to the UK to help convert generations of new fans. It was a strange period when anime imports were still being released as single discs with 2 to 4 individual episodes apiece, despite costing as much as we pay for complete series collection these days. Where most people are still paying for their internet connections according to the time they spend online, outside of universities, which were reportedly anime piracy hubs, given that downloading even a single low-resolution poorly translated filler episode of a month-old show could take more than a day, and often involve multiple disconnections. Fan files were out of reach for a lot of people in the UK at the time. Importing from the US was usually the only option, especially for longer television shows, which were often too expensive for the UK anime distributors on the day to be able to release. We have come a long way in 2 decades. Sadly, as a result of the difficulties of the past, Several wonderful titles slipped through the cracks and never received a UK home video releases at all. They were inviable options at the time, and now they're considered too old to appeal to the fans of today. It turns out that two of my very favorite 2002 anime series fall into this unfortunate category. The 12 Kingdoms is a sprawling fantasy saga, an early example of isekai, based on a series of novels by Fuyomi Ono, who was penned the novels behind Ghost Hunt and Shiki. Unlike a lot of modern fantasy anime, the 12 Kingdoms borrows more from Asian mythology than the classic Sino-European setting. It is complex narrative from the perspective of a displaced Japanese schoolgirl has a serious tone seldom found in the genre. There's a diverse cast of characters including humans and beast folk. It is not politicking between the various nations. The title are 12 Kingdoms, so keep on stake high. Sadly, the anime adaptations finished without covering all of the material for the novels, and Tokyopop's English translation of the novel stopped in a similar place. So the series is still incomplete 2 decades later with several dangling plot threads. Despite being well worth a watch for the novels that they did manage to cover, Parasatai is ripe for the return to the 12 Kingdoms. There is certainly still a healthy appetite for isekai fantasy spin-off novels are still being published, intermittently in Japan. If it does receive a second chance at a complete adaptation one day, I will be rooting for Konihiko Ryo to return to provide the most music once again. The creative team assembly for the 2002 anime put together a wonderful classic, which doesn't get as much acknowledged as it deserves. My second pick is a very different show, which sent a few excited ripples through the fan communities and various anime news crews back in the day. I didn't get to see Princess Tuto until a few years later when ADVision brought it to the US, but for the title, I was expecting a light, floppy magical girls series aimed at small children. I've been a big fan of Sailor Moon during its run on German television, and the involvement of several members of the staff made it a must-buy. The series ended up surprising me. It starts out as a whimsical fantasy story about a duck who becomes a magical ballet dancer, with the sword throws of a western fairy tale mixed seamlessly together with the heart-pounding melodrama of a good shoujo manga. It's not long before the plot thickens and our plucky hero has to deal with some big problems. The soundtrack is largely composed of classical music instead of modern composition, together with the dreamy themes contributed by Ritsuko Okazaki at the very height of her too short career. I just suggest Princess Tutu to anybody who likes drama, dance, cute girls and boys, or a good self-contained story with some surprisingly dark twists and turns. While the 12 Kingdoms never did make it to the UK in anime form, Princess Tutu managed a belated arrival as part of High Dive's online library, and I heartily recommend it even 2 decades later. HWR 2002 saw a slew of modern classic anime, drawing none stand out for me as much as Ghost in the Shell standalone complex does, a spiritual successor to the seminal Mamoru Hoshi science fiction film released in 1995, a film which took the Western world by storm. This series focuses on the members of Section 9 as they investigate various cases, including an overarching story based on a notorious hacker dubbed The Laughing Man. Standalone complex consists of standalone episodes focusing on individual cases and storylines, and also episodes which carry the same continuity involving the Laughing Man case. What's great about this structure is that it gives me members of Section 9 outside of Makoto and Bato opportunities to shine, especially Togosa, who really comes into his own as a character across the series. Director Kenji Kamiyama does a great job of taking what was established in the 1995 film and expanding upon it, building great lore and making the most sober cast of characters. You can kind of score the series also boasts some solid music featuring the likes of Origa, Scott Matthew, and Ilaria Graciano, and adds further memorability to the series. The second season is arguably the stronger of the two. This series established the groundwork and is one of my all-time favorites, remaining one of the finest sci-fi anime to come out of the 21st century. Onosome will be exposed to some anime as a kid like Pokemon Digimon and Cardcaptors. I didn't get into it properly until the mid-2000s boom. However, I did end up watching several shows from 2002 when they originally appeared on TV, drawing the likes of Anime Central, the Anime Network Block, or Propeller, and the various pop channels. While these channels have some really heavy hitters that have since been lovingly re-released on Blu-ray, like Ghost in the Shell, Standalone Complex, and Fullmetal Alchemist, there were quite a few hidden gems on the show. These include what was one of the first forays into the isekai, trapped in the video game plots, Hack-Sign, what the now more popular sword online was just getting started with its web novels. Hack was already entertaining fans with an emerging multimedia franchise, consisting of a trilogy of video games, anime, manga, and novels. Sign works as a prequel origin story for the original games, established the main setting of the world, with a story that is very similar to its genre siblings. where the player finds themselves unable to log out of the game and falls comatose in the real world. While Sword Online is more of a male power fantasy story, Hacksign is a fantasy adventure that is built around its ensemble cast unraveling the mystery behind the odd events that are happening in the game and trying to help the aforementioned trapped player. Tsukasa, Lago to get back to their real body, but it has been a while since I last rewatched it. I remember really enjoying this for its immersive world building, engaging characters, and touching storyline. It was just a perfect mix of two things I love, video games and fantasy novels. And certainly with the former, I think it's bridged the gap between the video game and anime worlds really well. It also had an amazing soundtrack. It is a show that credited with the discovery Yuki Kajiura and indeed Chiaki Ishikawa back in the Seesaw days. As such, it is still one of the favorite anime openings of all time. While the series received a reprint in the US from Funimation in 2015, it has long been out of print in the UK, and even though it's probably too old to get any kind of Blu-ray release, I still like to see this available again for folks who experience an isekai story that isn't just one overpowered guy demolishing everything. Another hidden gem that I'd like to mention is Tokyo Mew Mew, a series that is thankfully getting a reboot this year. It's one that I remember casually enjoying the odd episodes I saw, but I didn't watch enough to really follow the ongoing storyline. Airing around the same time as other magical girl series like Cardcaptor Sakura, Magical Doremi, and Princess Tutu, the series tells the story of Ichigo Mominiya, a girl who suddenly finds herself acting like a cat and getting the ability to transfer into a superhuman cat girl, and to be involved in an incident at the Endangered Species exhibit, partnering with the four other girls who make up the Mew Mews. They must now defend the Earth from aliens who are turning animals into monsters. This is going quite a way back now, but I remember this show being a lot of fun, even though I wasn't watching it on the regular. I recall it having a more romantic angle than some of the others, which is pretty interesting to note as looking at the way magical girl shows have progressed over the years. It's not something that tends to get pushed to the forefront. Most prequel series tend to place their focus more on friendship with a bit of a moral message, for example. As such, I'm actually quite looking forward to seeing what they can do with the reboot, and I'm hoping they can do a classic Magical Girl series justice in a better way than Cinnamon Crystal did. While the original TV series has never been available on disc here in my knowledge, the source manga is available in a series of omnibus volumes from Kodansha in both print and digital formats.